Hi, this is Pastor Joel Webbin with Right Response Ministries, and you're listening to another episode of our show called Questions. Our question for today is as follows. Is it petty to refuse to wear a mask? Is it petty to refuse to wear a mask? To flesh the question out a little bit more, our listener has written this. There's no mask mandate where I currently live, but many businesses and facilities still have signs that say that they require masks. Now, I personally refuse to wear a mask for two reasons. Number one, masks are proven to be ineffective in stopping the spread of the virus unless it's an N95 mask, which very few people actually wear. And number two, I believe that the mask is merely a religious symbol that is essentially the same as a Christian wearing a cross necklace. However, I keep getting called petty by close loved ones who are also Christian or profess to be for my refusal to mask up. So, is it actually petty for a Christian to refuse to wear a mask? Should I just comply in order to be peaceable, to keep the peace? Or is this a hill worth dying on? Great question. I don't think it's a hill worth dying on, but I do think it's a hill worth fighting on. So I think there's other hills that I would reserve for dying on. I'm going to fight to the death. I don't feel that strongly about the mask thing, but I would fight. No. So to answer your question, the short answer, no, I don't think you're being petty. Now, at the end of the day, I don't know your motives. I don't know your heart, right? Man looks at the outward appearance. I'm sitting here reading the question. God alone looks at the heart. And so you could have arrogant, prideful, presumptuous, petty motives. And that's a whole nother thing. But the question is simply just asking about, just the action itself, the action or the decision to refuse to wear a mask in those facilities, in those businesses that have a sign. Their policy is that they require a mask. And these are private entities, I'm assuming, right? So you said you live in a place where there's not currently a mask mandate at a civil level. So I'm assuming these are private businesses, right? Maybe it's a Costco or something like that. And they currently still require the mask, or it's a Walmart. And these are private businesses, and private businesses have the right to be dumb. And this is dumb. These private businesses are being dumb. This is what I would say. I remember what I did was I would keep a random dirty piece of cloth in my pocket, aka the mask that everybody is wearing, because that's all it is. It's disgusting. It really is disgusting. Nobody's wearing a fresh N95, every day. Everybody's wearing a handkerchief or a napkin or the mask that they wore, for the past month and have never washed. And so anyway, so I would keep that nasty little rag in my pocket like everybody else, except I wouldn't put it on. I would go into a business that required masks. Now, they have the right to be dumb. It's a private entity, private business. Right? They can say, we refuse service to people who don't wear a purple shirt. Well, fine, they can do that. But the reason why businesses don't do that is because they know it's bad business. They'll lose business. And part of the reason businesses have been able to get away with this for so long is because we haven't allowed them to feel the hurt, to feel the consequence of doing what they're doing, which should be bad business, right? There's no science to back it up. People aren't walking around wearing N95s. A few people maybe. But for the most part, people are wearing a wadded up, dirty piece of cloth that they carry around in their pocket. They don't wash it. They sneeze into it. They touch it, this with their hands and then touch the mask, and they're fidgeting with it. And most of the people, let's be honest, they're not even wearing it across their whole face. It's underneath their nose or it's down here. It really is it is like a necklace. Some people are wearing it underneath their chin, like a chin strap. It's not even covering their mouth, much less their nose. And so it's virtue. It's virtue signaling. We know that. You're right. It's a religious symbol. It's the religious symbol of the left religion to science, right? Not actual science, but this fantasy, this religion of science that is anything but scientific. So what do you do with the business that has the bad business model of requiring you to do the thing that makes no sense? What I would do is I would walk in with the dirty piece of cloth in my pocket, and I would not put it on, and I would just be confident, polite. I wouldn't be a jerk, polite, respectful, but I'd just be confident. And I'd walk into, H-E-B or whatever and do what I came to do, get my groceries, run my errand, all that kind of stuff. And most of the time, people would just leave me alone. If they did stop me, what they normally would do, what they started doing was they say, can I offer you a mask? And so right? They're asking a question. Can I offer you a mask? And so I would politely answer and say, no, thank you, and keep walking. I would make them have to engage in an uncomfortable confrontation, is what I'm saying. So they'd have to really step out of their comfort zone. Not because I'm bringing it up to a level 11. No, I'm just moving. I'm moving, right? No, thank you. And then just keep walking. It's required. And then if they say, well, it's required, I would stop and I would say, so if I don't wear a mask, I have to leave. You don't want my business unless I wear a mask. And I would ask it just like that. And they'd have to say, yeah, we do not want the business of rational people. That's essentially what they would have to say. And then I would say, okay, then I will take my business elsewhere. And I would leave. And the reason why I would have the wadded up piece of cloth in my pocket is because if I was pressed for time, I didn't like doing this, and I don't think it's ideal, so I'm not recommending it. But if I was pressed for time and I didn't have time practically to go somewhere else, then in those cases I would say, okay, and I would put on a mask because I needed to shop. I didn't have time to go somewhere else. And they were forcing a dumb mandate, a dumb rule, but it is their business and they do have the right to be dumb. And I have the right to take my business elsewhere. And I think the only reason why businesses have chosen to have such a dumb policy for so long is because more individuals, patrons of these businesses, have not exercised their right to take their business elsewhere when establishments and companies enforce dumb rules. So as often as I could, as often as I practically had time, I would go somewhere else. Now, all that being said, is it petty? Well, that's what I would do. In terms of what I meant by what I was doing, what I was trying to accomplish, one thing that I was trying to accomplish, because if nobody stopped me, which most of the time that was the case, nobody would stop me, and I would do my shopping, I would give that business that requires masks, dumb policy, I would reward them by giving them my business, but I wouldn't wear the mask. And I saw that still as at some level, it's small, so I'm not saying like I'm putting my life on the line or, I'm not trying to make this a big deal, but I do think, and still in a small way, I wasn't loving that business necessarily, but I was loving all the other patrons in that business that day. I was loving my neighbor. I was loving my neighbor by setting an example for my neighbor, making a statement to my neighbor that the fear that people have about COVID is irrational. One of the things you can do in an irrational culture that has lost its ever-loving mind, one of the ways that you can love them is reminding them what sanity looks like. Just reminding them, oh, I forgot what it looks like to see a sane person in a Walmart. And so I would love my neighbor by not complying. Because that's the thing, it doesn't even take the majority. I'm convinced it doesn't even take the majority. It just takes a critical mass, which I think is probably a lot closer to like 10%, 15%, 20 I think would be more than enough. 20% of Southwest pushing back, right? Southwest drops their rules, their mandate, right? So I think in any given business organization or in a community, in a county, in a city, in a state, I think it doesn't take the majority. I think it just takes a few individuals that inspire some other individuals and remind them that, hey, you can do this and it's not the end of the world. And and then all of a sudden you get a critical mass that doesn't require 70, 80%. I don't think it even requires 51%, but literally 10 to 20% of this snowball effect. And then all of a sudden, like the old adage, well, they can't fire all of us. Well, here's the deal. They can't even fire 20% in most cases. And some businesses have really actually been that dumb and have fired a swath of nurses, whether it be in the medical field, in hospitals or whatever, but they're feeling the consequences right now. And I think a lot of those businesses that have been foolish are wising up and realizing they made a huge mistake. And so I think if we just continue to love our neighbor by not complying with tyranny or insanity, tyranny in the case of the state, insanity in the case of private businesses, taking their cues from the state. In both regards, by not complying with tyranny in the civil realm and not complying with insanity in the private marketplace, I think that we are loving our neighbor. I really do. Because I think the more we roll over to, the more that we comply with, the more that we just jump through the hoops, the more hoops there are going to be. And those hoops are going to get harder and harder to jump through. At the end of the day, I think most leaders, whether it be leaders in the state or leaders in Fortune 500 or whatever it might be, I think most leaders only exercise as much power as they legitimately think that they can get away with. And when those leaders get a sense from the public that this isn't going to fly, then they don't even try it. I think one of the reasons we've continued, 15 days to slow the spread has turned into 500 something days to slow the spread, and all these different things, vax mandates, and now, like California, is going to be probably mandating vaccines for 5-year-olds and up if they go to school, and even in private schools. There's a possibility now. I think part of the reason why we've seen such massive oversteps is because it was the same thing that gave David confidence to face Goliath. He tells King Saul, well, I've already killed the bear and the lion, and this uncircumcised Philistine won't be any different. Well, I think in a tragic sense of the reverse, our pagan, leftist, tyrannical, civil government has said, we already got them to wear the dirty piece of cloth. Simon says this, Simon says jump, Simon says sit, Simon says roll over. We've already gotten these sheep to do all these other nonsensical things that we know are nonsense. We know it doesn't follow the science. We know it doesn't. And yet they keep doing it. This is phenomenal how much power we have. So we feel confident, right? Because we've been able to get them, right? We've been able to beat them like a lion and like a bear. We can beat them even if they're a giant. We can demand even more. But I think the moment that we begin to resist, and again, I don't think it takes the majority, but the moment that you have a critical mass, I would argue, 10 to 20% of people pushing back saying, no, thank you, that's enough. I think people stop. Those in positions of authority, whether it be the private business sector or whether it be civil magistrates, I think they stop. And them stopping, whether our crazy neighbor, maybe your neighbor is a flaming liberal who thinks that 2 + 2 is 5, so like maybe your neighbor doesn't feel loved, but the Bible doesn't say that we're commanded to make our neighbor feel loved. The Bible says that we are to objectively do that which is loving to our neighbor. And you standing up to tyrants so that the tyrants stop taking more of the liberties and freedoms from your neighbor is loving your neighbor. And a thing as small as not wearing a mask, I believe, is one of the ways to do that. So no, I don't think it's petty. And if you could somehow boil that answer down to 2 or 3 sentences, that's what I would say to your loved ones who think that you're just being a jerk. Thanks for tuning in.
As a special thank you for your gift of any amount, we'll be happy to send you a free digital book from our store. To access this offer, visit rightresponseministries.com/offer. We highly recommend Pastor Joel's book, Am I Truly Saved? If you or someone you know has wrestled with doubts about the love of God, this would be a great resource. As a reminder, to get this offer, go to rightresponseministries.com/offer. And thank you for your generous support.